Good morning. My name is Emanuele di Lorenzo, and today I will report on the project entitled Mechanisms of Pacific Decadal Variability in Earth System Models. This project is with co-PI Matt Newman at UC Boulder, Sam Stevenson at UC Santa Barbara, and a whole bunch of researchers, students, and postdoc at the different labs, including a collaborator from DOE, Luc van Rockel. The project objective is to develop a fundamental understanding and synthesis of the mechanisms that energize Pacific decadal variability in Earth system models. We have identified 4 data streams that we'd like to analyze. One is the Reanalysis products, the CMIP6 Ensemble, individual large ensemble from Earth system models, and a new E3SM large ensemble that is being developed by this project. The idea is to analyze the mechanisms that energize variance through a set of diagnostic tools based on empirical dynamical models, specifically linear inverse models. With that said, let's talk a little bit about the zoo of Pacific climate modes. As you know, there's a wide range of characterization of Pacific climate that is based on these climate modes, and this project aims to move beyond the comparisons of the climate mode statistics across the Earth system models towards identifying and comparing the fundamental mechanisms that energize the PDV, or Pacific decadal variance, in each of these models. So here is a cartoon of the different definitions of climate modes in the Pacific in red and blue across the North and South Pacific here. And the idea these modes are not independent, and in fact a whole bunch of these modes, these red set here, are connected to ENSO and its teleconnections from the tropics to the extratropics. In turn, we also have this other set of blue climate modes that is also connected to tropical-extratropical coupling, but in this case is from the extratropics to the tropics, and these particular type of dynamics are often referred to as the North Pacific and South Pacific ENSO precursor dynamics. So the idea is that this coupling between extratropics, tropics to extratropics is a fundamental mechanisms that reddens the internal stochastic variability, say, of the atmosphere in both the northern and southern hemisphere and the tropics. It reddens this stochastic variability into the decadal variance of the basin scale, and this mechanism essentially provides the memory, this coupling tropics to extratropics. So in short, just to repeat this hypothesis, the idea is that seasonal coupling between tropics and extratropics associated with the sequence extratropical ENSO precursor to ENSO teleconnections reddens the stochastic variability into basin scale decadal variance. Now, with this hypothesis in mind, we analyze these data streams that I've introduced earlier, and I just want to mention that some of the dynamics that I'm discussing here were already discussed in some of the breakout talks, on extremes by Antonietta Capotandi and Tong Su, because these dynamics also impact extremes. So in terms of the Reanalysis product, I'm going to feature one study by Zhao and Di Lorenzo in 2020. Up here is a map of the Pacific decadal variance that is explained by the first principal component of the basin scale low-pass SSTA, or sea surface temperature anomalies. In this case, the low pass is 8 here. So you have this map, and down below here is the same map, but now this is the Pacific decadal variability that is explained by the ENSO precursors. And this studies concluded that 64% of PDV in the observations can be accounted through ENSO precursor dynamics. We then went on to analyze this hypothesis also in an ensemble of CMIP models, and here is the result. Same plots. Up here we have the decadal variance associated with the PDV. This is class 1 models, and this is class 2 models, which I'll explain in a second. And down here is the amount of variance, of decadal variance explained by the precursors. So you can see that on average, the amount of variance explained by the precursor is lower, and the precursor also simulated in different ways in the models. But in general, we found that the CMIP models that capture the ENSO precursor dynamics a little bit better tend to also exhibit a better characterization of PDV in both space and time. Having said that, we also find that models tend to energize the Pacific decadal variability through other processes, and in general, as you can see also in these maps, there is weaker tropical-extratropical coupling dynamics both to the tropics and from the tropics. Moving forward, we also analyzed some large ensemble products of individual models. And here in this particular case study that I'm featuring here, we looked at what is the relative role of the North and South Pacific ENSO precursor in impacting the tropical decadal variability. And so this plot here shows the decadal variance in the tropics as a function of the different latitudes. Essentially, is the 8-year low pass variance at each point. And this in gray here is the large ensemble from CSM, showing how the variance is distributed with latitude. And down here in red is the same plot, but done with an ensemble of simulations that do not include the impact of the South Pacific precursors. And the take-home message is that the total amount of decadal variance in the tropics is greatly reduced when we don't account the South Pacific precursor. Of course, this is a model-dependent mechanism, and this is for this model, and we plan to analyze these also for other models. Moving forward, I want to touch briefly on the new E3SM large ensemble that we are producing. And this is a new 20-member ensemble with the E3SM, and Sam Stevenson will be talking about this afternoon. What's unique about this ensemble is that it has a particular initialization that uses different decadal climate ocean states. So in other words, from a control run, we identified 20 decadal ocean states that are very far apart from each other and use those for initialization. And what's interesting about it, and Sam will talk about it, is that the decadal ocean state do matter, especially if we look at the projection of temperatures on the 50 to 100-year time scale, all around the globe, but also more importantly at the regional space scale. Last, I want to also touch base upon our progress on developing these diagnostic tools based on empirical dynamical models, in particular our work with linear inverse models. And the first paper I want to refer that was already presented several times now in different forms at the multi-year breakout sessions by Ying Zhao and also Youngjin Zhou is that we have a limb that allows us to selectively include the coupling between tropics and extratropics. And it turns out that this does impact the character of PDV. Next, I would like to talk about another development with the linear inverse model, which is one that accounts for the seasonal dynamic. And as you know, seasonal dynamics are important because if we look at the observations shown here, this is a number of tropical warm events, as a function of the month. The red are the observations, and you see there's a clear seasonal cycle. And that's also associated with the fact that ENSO is space-locked with the seasonal cycle. And if we just use a linear inverse model in the traditional case, we find that in the ensemble mean, there is no seasonality in the variance. It's just uniform here. The blue line is the ensemble mean, and the gray is the spread. And so because these processes are dependent on ENSO and the seasonal cycle, we developed now a cyclostationary linear inverse model that does account for seasonal dynamics. And you can see here in blue that we are able to better track this dependence of variance or events in this case as a function of the seasonal cycle. And so the idea is that we want to use this model to further explore how seasonality impacts the mechanisms of Pacific decadal variability. And we think that this cyclostationary limb will allow us to better do that. And so I want to conclude with some near-term objectives. The first goal is to continue to complete the 20-member large ensemble covering the period 1850 to 2100. Right now, we just have runs up to 2000, so we have to do the projection runs. The other two goals is to make our limb diagnostic toolkit available for the RGMA community, as well as complete the seasonal limb diagnostics and possibly make that available as well. And then the last is to continue to perform a more comprehensive analysis of large ensemble simulation from CSM, GFDL in comparison with the one that we are producing, which is the E3SM. And with that, I conclude and thank you for your time.